tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Hi, Michelle. It's great to have you on. Please tell everyone about yourself and yeah, why you're here.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And I'm a fertility acupuncturist or an acupuncturist specializing in fertility health. And I've had my own journey. I actually changed my career from architecture to acupuncture and really natural medicine. Studied, I started with Ayurveda. And it was really all due to my own reproductive health imbalances with my menstrual cycle, having 3-month cycles, really missing periods since the time that I got my period up until about age 25 when I found an acupuncturist. And I was told over and over again, like, that's just the way your body is. If you want a regular period, then go on the birth control pill. And so I always knew from the beginning, and it was like 17 when I first heard that, it never made sense to me. I was like, why do I need to take a pill in order to be regular? Like, what's going to happen when I get off? You're going to be irregular again. So it never made sense to me from the beginning. I didn't know anything about medicine, but I did. I was very surprised that I did not get a resolution. I was really expecting the doctor to help. So it was my first taste of that, like this Band-Aid that really wasn't a true solution. And I remember years after, like going on and off the birth control pill, going to an acupuncturist, and he sat me down, told me how important the menstrual cycle is for a woman. And then he also said, we look at the root cause, we don't work on the symptom. And I remember thinking, wow, that makes sense. You feel it in your body when you hear truth. So that was basically the beginning of my passion. It like started this whole quest of doing something that felt more aligned to me, that I really believed in. And of course, when something really impacts you, you want to scream it from the rooftops. You
Oh,
want to
yeah.
tell everybody about it. And that's really like why I feel so passionate. And then of course it led me into fertility health, and which is very much at the core. I mean, I thank Dr. Lee, who was my acupuncturist, for my fertility health. At the time, I wasn't married. I just was lucky enough to find him early on. But I know without a doubt, I mean, I would have had such an uphill battle had I not found him, had I not found that resolution. So it just made me believe in the body. And it also made me realize that Western medicine is amazing. Eastern medicine is amazing. They both have their pluses. They both have their blind spots, where areas that they don't shine. Like if you have a heart attack, you're not going to go to your acupuncturist. You're going to go to the emergency room. So there are amazing things about them, but you cannot take just because they say something because they don't know doesn't mean it's 100%. And the body is incredibly resilient and powerful. And I just remember the time I was 17, I knew intuitively something didn't feel right. So this is where I'm very big on the intuition and your inner wisdom as a person.
Yeah, well, I mean, you are your body. Your body is attached to you. You can feel when something's amiss, when something's not right. What was your experience on the pill?
So for me, I felt like I retained water more, and I also felt like I might have gained a little weight on it, and I felt a little bit more emotional. I think it like impacted my emotion, my mood, and there was something else. I had recurrent yeast infections as well,
Gosh.
and that was definitely after that. And now looking back, I know more about it. It can cause that. So it can cause all of those things, but it definitely throws off your hormones. It for sure is a Band-Aid. I mean, it's good for some things, but I wouldn't say long term. And a lot of doctors say, oh, don't worry about it. You can go on it for 20 years. As soon as you get off, you can get pregnant. Not true.
No.
Not true. I've seen people come to me and just not get their period at a very young age, not get their period. And so we would work hard with herbals and acupuncture, and we finally would get the period, but it took a while.
What's been your experience in terms of how it affects fertility and just the ability to kind of have children afterwards and normal periods?
Well, it is interesting because everybody's so different. And so everybody responds differently. Some people just get off and then they get their period next month. Most of the time, even if that is the case, they do start getting symptoms at first until things regulate. The acupuncture definitely like helps get the body regular faster. But generally speaking, if you think about what it does, it's really suppressing like our normal hormone patterns. And we have almost like this thermostat in our body so that whenever anything's a little off, our body responds. We have this like negative feedback system. So, or negative feedback loop. So if it knows that it doesn't have something else, or if it has more of something else, even if it's not from the body, it'll shut off the body's production of that hormone. So it, it definitely throws things off. I had one teacher who actually, in Chinese medicine, she did a lot of work with fertility. She said it basically makes the ovaries lazy because they don't need to do anything.
That's such a good way to
for
say it.
years and years. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know some women as well will go on the pill where they can not have the sort of sugar pill where they are just confusing their body and being like, no period at all. We're made to have these periods. Yes, we don't like them, but we're made to do it. So a lot of women are put off by acupuncture. Because of like the idea of sort of these sort of needles like going into you, and obviously so many women don't even like needles in the first place, and I mean you get stuck with so many when you're going through fertility treatments or pregnancies and stuff like that, but when it comes to acupuncture, we're like, oh no, I couldn't do that, but we're stuck with needles all the time. So do you have any kind of advice or anything about it in terms of like how to move through that fear, and also what it was like for you the first time you went in for that acupuncture treatment, and sort of were you worried about it?
Not at all. I loved it. It was interesting because the first time I actually went was in San Francisco. It wasn't Dr. Lee, but it was only a one-time thing. And I went to a school. So they had like students there, and I had really bad back pain. So having something in there really felt good. I was like, I just wanted, because I was like a deep tissue, like I liked that deep tissue. So I felt like, oh my God, this is like the release I was looking for. And it really got in there and like really broke up the stagnation. So I'm kind of an anomaly, I guess, on that. Like not everybody feels like that, but I get people that are afraid of needles all the time. So a couple of things. There is, there are alternatives. There's laser acupuncture where they use laser beams for acupressure points, and you could do acupressure. I mean, there are other ways. I mean, they're not ideal, or you could do ear seeds on the ears. It's better to do the acupuncture because you get a lot more. But the truth is, they are hair thin needles. You don't feel them as much as you think you would. And if you do feel something, it's more of the energy. It's almost like when you get a deep tissue massage and you can feel like the nerve. You feel like not like the nerve but you can feel almost like that feeling of something moving. So people will feel that, and it literally lasts less than half a second. It just it comes and goes. So, and then it's gone. So people have the needles in. So, and then some people who are afraid of needles will go through it for a little while and be scared, and they'll start their palms will start sweating. And I walk them through it. And you can also ask for baby needles. Sometimes I'll use baby needles. They are like super hair thin, like beyond thin. You could barely feel anything. Not as potent, as the other ones, but I'll start with that. And those are the ones that you usually would use on kids. They're very, very, very mild. And so I'll start with that. I won't go as deep. You also have to have a practitioner that will work with you. Some practitioners, they almost don't care. They'll treat everybody the same. And you really need somebody who will go easy on you and not stimulate too much right off the bat. But I mean, there are other options. Plus, another thing, if you're not doing IVF, you can do also Chinese herbs.
If you're doing IVF, Chinese herbs is not a good option, I'm guessing.
Correct. Yeah, because it can impact hormones, and we don't want to do that because it's going to contraindicate and kind of throw off what they're trying to do, because usually they're trying to manipulate the hormones to make the body do what it wants, what they want it to do. So they're kind of controlling the way you're ovulating, they're controlling it. So you really don't want to mess with that at all. That's where a lot of people who specialize in fertility will understand a lot about supplements, because a lot of supplements are safe to take during IVF. So that's the difference kind of with somebody who just does general acupuncture and herbs versus somebody who understands fertility specifically, because you have to kind of move and pivot depending on what the person's doing.
With acupuncture, I'm guessing like it's fine with IVF and sort of when you're doing those hormonal treatments, or is there specific spots?
It's more than fine. It improves success rates. There's some studies that show that it helps. I mean, it really helps a lot. Yeah, because it brings blood flow. I mean, you could do other things also to just general balance, which helps alleviate some of the symptoms that people experience with the fertility drugs. And then on top of that, it also improves blood flow. So as the drugs are coming in and they're trying to grow the eggs, how are they doing that? Through blood. And when you're putting the blood flow in the pelvis, you're getting needles in. So what it's causing is kind of like an immune response, but it's a controlled injury, because it's not an infection. There's nothing really bad happening, but the body's alarm system is like, hey, something's here. Let me go check. Like, let me get blood flow, collagen, whatever, just to make sure that we're there if we need it. So lots of blood goes to that area where the needles are. And you'll see the blood actually like a little red around the needles. And so that's one of the things. Plus it's also meridian points and it gets the energy flowing. So it's for sure a wonderful complement to IVF.
It sounds like it would be. In terms of like after a loss or after pregnancy, can you use acupuncture to kind of work through that? Because it sounds like it's one of those sort of almost healing things as well, because of the way it sort of works to stimulate.
Yeah, I mean, what it does is it evokes the self-healing ability of the body. It really turns on that self-healing by also putting you in a parasympathetic mode where you're resting. Your body's able to release. A lot of times people have emotional releases, which is great. It's actually a good thing because you want to release. A lot of times people hold emotions in their body, and part of the healing is really releasing those emotions. So we work on all those different levels, really calming the spirit, helping the emotions, helping trauma. There's certain protocols that we use for trauma as well, because it's an emotional trauma and it's a physical trauma. And then also just the acupuncture itself puts you in a self-healing state. So your body's able to heal faster and get to homeostasis.
Yeah, it sounds like it would really help that kind of grieving process as well, just to sort of move through. If you're getting that release of emotions, I know it's when you go through the loss, it's really hard to kind of understand what you're feeling sometimes. So if you were doing something like that, I mean, I'm sure you'd have some kind of reaction. Have you worked with a lot of women who have gone through loss? How did it sort of play out? Were there reactions emotionally?
Oh yeah, I do currently work with a lot of people that have gone through loss. One of them actually went through loss at my office. Like she was on the phone with the nurse. I will never forget that image in my mind of like that scene. She's actually really a near and dear patient for me. Like I really, it's interesting as you're working with people, you really become attached to them and like you develop bonds because you're really going through the journey and you're human. So you go through it with them. And so it's devastating. I mean, there's no words to describe it, because a lot of times when it comes to loss, and especially with pregnancy loss, it doesn't have the same kind of community coming around you. There's no talk about it. And so many times, this is what I hear over and over. They're traumatized by the hospitals. They're traumatized by feeling like a number.
Yeah.
They want to ask for help and nobody gives them help. And like, they feel very dismissed, like, oh, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. You just go home. Like, you're going to be fine. And they're like, no, something's off. And then sometimes there's like tissue left over and they intuitively know, but they're kind of like, so the trauma goes on. It's like not just the situation itself, but also like the system and feeling like it's failed them. And so what happened, like I hear this over and over again. This is just something repeated. So with my one patient, she went through it and she's been coming to me. She was coming to me every single week. And eventually she was going to do IVF and she got pregnant naturally. And she delivered, she had the baby and she got pregnant again and everything was fine. But looking back, I mean, she went through so much, through the process and grieving and that's the thing. So a lot of times when it is pregnancy loss, people feel like they're grieving alone.
Yeah, I think it as well. Even when you have the support at home, some like from your partner or something like that, you can still feel alone because obviously they will experience that loss very differently from the woman because obviously we have the sense of place of where that baby was.
It's really primal.
Did you say you had kids? I couldn't remember.
Yes, I have two
Yes.
kids.
Yes. So what was your experience of having children?
I'm indebted to Dr. Lee. Like I literally am because of him, I was able to get pregnant. Like I was ready. And I feel very lucky that I did this before I was even trying, because I wouldn't even know that acupuncture helps with your menstrual cycle. I wouldn't know that acupuncture, like I wouldn't have known about acupuncture had I not like gone to him. And it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, that's weird. I went away for 3.5 months and I didn't get my period the whole time. I'm like, Mom, I think I need to work on this. So that's when I went to see that she found out about acupuncture. She's like, why don't you try acupuncture? See if it works. I mean, and it just so happened to be that he was a gynecologist in China. So he had like, he specifically specialized in that. I really do believe in like fate and things happening for a reason, but I also do believe in free will and you need to be an active participant in listening to your body. Because for whatever reason, I decided to listen to my body and it happened to be earlier than when I got married. So because of that, I was able to conceive easily, thank God. But I know for a fact, I probably was not ovulating for about, I would say 12 years, because there's no way, I don't even know what was going on with my cycle. If I'm not getting my period in like for 3 months, 3.5 months, something's off completely.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of stories of women who have had those irregular periods and they didn't have the luck of getting pregnant and they just kept trying and trying, and this irregularity just just
you don't
happened.
know. You have no idea what's going on.
No, and they tried different things, but it was all obviously like normal sort of medicine that you go to your doctor and they're like, here, have these pills. And it just, it just so like perpetuates because they're not, again, like with a lot of the time with GPs, they don't look, like you said, at the actual root of the problem. They're just going, oh, well, you have this symptom, so here's the thing that will help with that.
I did actually have a chemical pregnancy before having my kids. So I did experience that and it was part of my journey. And, it was early on, as you know, like chemical pregnancies are, and you just never know why or what, or if it's going to be something that's repetitive at the time. But luckily I was able to have my kids after. And
what was the process to the chemical pregnancy?
So basically I just I saw a positive pregnancy and within maybe 8 hours I got a heavy period, and then I went to the doctor. And so because it's chemical pregnancies like super early on. So it'll show you a positive pregnancy, but it won't even get to the point of like even, I guess technically a miscarriage, but it is, but it's just like your body was trying to conceive and then it just right away let go. Yeah. So I didn't know what that was. I was like, that's really weird. And when I went to the doctor, they said, they said that it was a chemical pregnancy. That was the first time I've ever heard of that term. This is this is when I was doing architecture. I was like in a completely different field. I didn't know anything about the body, natural medicine, although my husband was a doctor, but I didn't really know, he's not a GYN. And what's interesting is I actually, kind of to speak esoterically, I had a dream. So I saw the positive, I fell asleep. I had a dream of a girl with long blonde hair sitting on top of a washer and dryer or something, kind of playing around, moving around. And I looked at her. I don't remember even the exchange. We were talking and she goes, okay, I'll see you later. And I woke up and I got my period. What's crazy is I obviously have brown hair. My husband has brown hair. He has green eyes. I have brown eyes. So, you think genetics, like what are the odds of,
Yeah.
having a blonde hair kid? My first, it has brown hair, brown eyes. My second is blonde hair and blue eyes. And when she was older, long blonde hair. So it was kind of crazy to think about, but there was definitely something to that is almost like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
I
mean, I don't know if you saw the video about my dream, but I had a dream of the first loss before I found out I was pregnant. And I dreamt that my child was in this like sunflower field and I couldn't get to her. Like she was there, but I couldn't, like I was trying to get to her. And she was so cute and gorgeous. And I was just like trying to find a way. And as close as I got, she just kept moving further away. And then all of a sudden everything kind of felt like it just stopped and it was peaceful. And then she looked at me and smiled. And then like the sun just shone really bright and I couldn't see anything and I woke up. And I was just like,
oh
my gosh, and this was before I knew about the loss, before I started bleeding. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to have another baby. And but I was actually already pregnant. And and then like a little while after I like bled a little bit and found out I was losing the baby, or I didn't have, like it hadn't developed properly and stuff. But it's amazing. Like I still stand by that was her. That was the child that I lost. And maybe that was like the goodbye, the kind of like, hi, hi.
Oh my God. Wow. That's really like profound and touching and sad and so many things at once. And it's interesting because I'm listening to an audiobook. It's called The Awakened Brain. I don't know if you've heard of it. I'll send you information about it. But this woman actually, she went through it. She went through fertility challenges and she got pregnant and she had a dream that she lost the baby and she woke up saying, no, I'm pregnant. Like she had that dream and then she went to the doctor and then they couldn't find the heartbeat. So it was like a prophetic dream. Like she knew. It's so mysterious. Like the whole thing is so mysterious how things happen, but it's a really inspiring story actually, because she felt destined to adopt a baby that she felt really connected with. And then after adopting the baby, she got pregnant and she felt like they were meant to be siblings and it happened exactly how it was supposed to. It's a really like beautiful story. So it's just interesting how things like that happen and we get signs to just let us know.
For me, I'm a Christian, so like when I saw the bright light and I after I did lose the baby, I kind of see that bright light as maybe heaven, and the baby like, and she, that was her going to heaven. I think a placement is really important with that. I was going to say with the chemical pregnancy, I find it so fascinating what they like these terms like the medical industry kind of puts on things. Because to me, I mean, I still say, well, that that was a lost baby, like that was a pregnancy and that was real. How did you kind of take that, like chemical pregnancy? That sounds so weird.
I remember at the time crying a lot And I knew in my heart though, it was, I don't know, like I just felt like it was not the time.
Yeah.
That moment, it was just not the time. And I knew that
Yeah.
somehow, I just knew that it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
And it just like a knowing. And so of course I cried like that day. But then once I went to the doctor, I was like, I think at that point I was like, okay, I'm fine. You know what I mean? I kind of like I allowed myself to fully like full on cry
Yeah.
before. So it was kind of like at that point I was okay.
When we have these like emotional reactions, and I don't think we have those by accident. I think we know, it's a knowledge.
Yeah.
Being Christian, sort of the biblical view is like egg, sperm, it's life. So regardless of whether that life properly forms, it's still seen as life.
Yeah.
So that's for me. So like when I heard some of these terms like chemical pregnancy, I mean, I hadn't heard of any of this stuff at all until I'd had a miscarriage. And then I was hearing all these different things and I'm like, why are there so many terms for like this? You've lost a child. That's it. Like you've lost a baby. I don't understand.
Yeah.
You need all these names.
I take them all with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because the best one is what a geriatric pregnancy for 35. 35 is young to me. Like from my experience and the people that come to me, when somebody says, "Oh my God, I'm 35," I'm like, "You're young. You're young." Like, what is this that people put in your mind? Like all these labels, it makes me crazy. It's just it feels like such a shallow way to look at the human body. It seems kind of like so devoid of spirit. That's how I feel, but it is what it is. And it's kind of like what we have to work with. So I just take it with a grain of salt, go for what you can get out of it. And sometimes, like, for example, IVF clinics, reproductive endocrinologists, they're awesome at like uncovering things. So if somebody's going and wants to uncover what's going on, I say, but still wants to be pregnant naturally, I say, go take it with a grain of salt. They're going to try to convince you need IVF. A lot of times that happens.
Yeah.
Don't put so much attention towards that. Just try to get the tests out of them. Maybe she'll want to go to IVF. Fine. But like, give yourself that little break, get what you need, gather your thoughts, and then revisit it.
Have you had any success with acupuncture, like helping with any issues like the polycystic ovarian or anything like that?
Yeah. It's amazing. Actually, I believe I was never diagnosed with it, but looking back, I think I had it. Because even now when I did the Dutch test, like a little later on, my testosterone was a little high. And so I definitely had certain symptoms at times, like hair loss. So PCOS, if you work on it nutritionally and with acupuncture and herbs as well, it's actually something that you can really put in remission. It is very workable. Interestingly enough, sometimes you're told no. If you have PCOS, you're going to have a hard time getting pregnant. It's the same kind of thing. And it comes from ignorance on that level, because it's just ignorance on what diet can do for you, because you're not trained that way. So it is actually something that you can really help with diet alone, even, but like diet, supplements, acupuncture. Yeah. Like it's definitely something that you can work with.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, like, obviously, when you go to a GP and you go, they do a blood test, and they go, right, you're low in iron, which is obvious because all pregnant women usually are. And then they say, right, you need supplements. You're gonna, you might even need a transfusion, and you're like, okay. There's no question of like, what do you eat? What's your diet like?
Yeah.
Are you eating enough iron? Are you? Because I mean, a lot of us, like, I mean, myself, I don't eat enough red meat. I just don't. Like, I'm supposed to apparently, but I find it very hard. And
well, I could give you a little solution to that. Beef liver pills. So with red meat in general, it's better to have organ meats. And if you don't like the taste, just take the pills.
Yes.
Make sure it's grass fed.
My husband ordered some for me. He was like,
Yeah.
You're going to take these, it's going to be great, and you need your iron. And because
And that's the best way to get iron. It's a better way to get iron because it has all the other nutrients to help iron absorb, because there's an issue with iron. Sometimes you can take iron and if it doesn't get absorbed, you can get it, it's toxic.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's better to have it through beef liver and food than through supplements.
Yeah, I mean, with the transfusion stuff, I was like, once it's in you, and if you have a problem with it, that's done. You're gonna be in hospital for ages, because they're gonna have to try and work on you to like help you not have this over the top immune response. Because you literally had it injected into you. Like that's gonna be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, with my last pregnancy, I just kind of ate as much iron as I could, and then my levels did go up. And they were like, did you take supplements? And I said, no, because they make it really hard to go to the loo, which they do most of the time. They just
they do. They do.
Like, I'm pregnant. I'm so big right now. The last thing I need is to be backed up. Thanks. And yeah, and it's amazing. Like they just don't ask. And you're just like, why are you not doing that? You're not caring for your patients if you're not asking.
They're not trained to.
Diet. Yeah. I know. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I love your world. I do. I love your world of like, this alternate medicine, which actually isn't alternate because it's so old.
It's been around for many years.
Yeah.
It doesn't go out of style either.
No,
because you see all these like pharmaceuticals, they're great for a couple of years and then they find out they're terrible, and they do all these other things and then they switch, and so it's all these different things that come out that are not natural. That's what happens. But this is just based on nature like has a formula, so if you kind of go with that formula, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously there are like, oh God, I'm getting a fly that's attacking me.
I know.
I'm in Australia. It's very hot here right now. But yeah, I know that you can kind of like with natural medicine, I know you can get like herbs and things that aren't great. Like hibiscus, do not have it if you're pregnant. Like that.
You shouldn't.
Early
herbs. You have to be very careful with herbs in pregnancy. I'm very conservative with that. I don't suggest herbs with pregnancy. My husband got it in my head. He's like, do not, even if they're safe, just don't mess with it. You just can't.
We don't do tests on pregnant women for obvious reasons. So obviously we don't have any data on it really.
Exactly.
And yeah, when it comes to like herbs, I mean, there's certain ones we know from like Chinese tradition, because with hibiscus, the concubines used to give it to different ladies who were concubines also, and then they'd lose their baby. And it was all like this thing to like make sure that they were the only ones having the babies.
Even red raspberry leaves, even though red raspberry leaves are given for pregnancy, it should actually be given towards the end of the pregnancy, not in the beginning, because we don't know, but it may cause contraction. So it's actually better to do at the end of the pregnancy. A lot of times midwives will say take it at the end, but typically speaking, you just want to be conservative.
Your body knows what to do. Anyone who has had children, obviously when we get to that end point, we're like, okay, I'm ready now.
You're ready.
Come out, baby.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, I think it's so easy to kind of go into those herbals. But yeah, it's better to just let it happen. Your body knows what to do. It can do it.
Exactly. And you're taking prenatals anyway, so you're getting all the nutrients that you need. You're good.
Is there anything that you sort of recommend during labor or anything like that? I mean, I'm not sure if you could do, obviously acupuncture would be maybe an odd thing to try and do during labor.
Yes. Deborah Betts, who's actually a really good she's all about prenatal acupuncture. She has a protocol that you do from 37 weeks on, and it really helps get the labor, like it just helps the labor shorten, really. I think there was even a study on her protocol that showed that people who got it were able to give birth much easier. Like the time for the birth was much faster and it was natural. And So there's certain points that you can do to actually get things moving as it gets closer, but you can also do points to prepare. So it's like anything. The more you do beforehand, it's the same thing with before conception when you're preparing the body. It's all about doing things early to help. So it's not as easy at the time. I mean, but there's certain pressure points that you can do in the pelvis to help get things moving when a woman's in labor.
It's amazing how many things you can do with acupuncture. And what were some of the other things that you do? I know you said about herbs, and you don't really do that with women who are trying to conceive. But what else sort of do you do?
So I also do fertility coaching online, and I work with people internationally because there's so many things that you can do that don't need just acupuncture. And I work with diet, mindset. So I also studied hypnotherapy. I'm really big on the mind because I just think it's just this asset that we carry and we have no idea how to use. And if we're able to use it, I mean, because you can use visualizations, and there are studies. I love working with studies and showing people studies, because sometimes people have a preconceived notion that certain things are woo-woo or that they're kind of like out there, but there are studies that show that visualizations can have a physiological effect and that our bodies don't really know. Like when our minds are thinking about something, our bodies can respond as if it's already happening or it's happening right now. You can think of a lemon, for example. If you really think of a lemon, you'll start to salivate. Why are you salivating? You're not having a lemon. You're thinking about a lemon and you're having a physiological response. Your body is responding for something that's actually not conscious. It's in your subconscious mind. Salivation is not something you can just willfully do. So I'm salivating now as I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But like you know, if you think about something, right? If you think about something, it causes a physiological response. And so I really utilize that a lot with my clients and my patients. Sometimes I create hypnotherapy audios for people, like online. It doesn't have to be people in person. I can do online virtually. And we create customized ones because they listen to it over and over again. The power of the mind is so powerful. I mean, it's just so powerful how when we have suggestions and we do something repeatedly, it really gets in there and it can have an impact on your physiology and your mind on like really every level.
Even in the lost space, sort of a grieving, that would be life-changing, because there's so much that you get it. I think a lot of women, like, they get it into their head. They're like, oh, it's my body. Like, my body's no good. Like, I have a crap body. And it's like, it's not your body. Like, your body is not crap. We just need to, you know, sort of calm that mind and just make sure you're more in touch with your body and help, like, get like ultimate health and sort of build you.
Absolutely.
It's all those mindsets. I mean, they can't be helpful in terms of physiologically either, because everything plays an effect. Like, if you're constantly going, I'm sick, you're going to feel sick. You're going to get sick at some point.
Of course.
It's like, with my morning sickness, I was like, oh, I'm going to throw up. And then I would throw up, obviously. But then the time I'm like, I'm not going to throw up. I'm going to be fine. I'm like, and then I did it. I was like, the mind is amazing.
It is. It really is. I mean, if you think about it, like, just for example, I have my two kids, right? One of my daughters, she just gets really frustrated with like sounds, and she'll hear it. And the more she hears it, the more it's annoying. And the more, whatever it is, like if we're out somewhere, and the other one's like, whatever, like, you know, whatever we focus on, that becomes like everything.
Yeah. Is that your eldest who doesn't like all the sounds?
Well, she doesn't like, she's like that with chewing. My other one, if something, she'll just focus on something that bothers her.
Yeah.
And it's like, it could be just something, it could be somebody making a certain noise she'll focus on it so intently. And I'm like, you got to stop focusing. You know, like, it's just,
I have
such an example of like,
I have that. I'm guessing you have the arguments too, because my son, he's very like full on with sounds and stuff, whereas my daughter's like, la, la, off with the fairies. She'll just make noise, and he's just
take turns though. They do take turns.
Yes. Annoying each other. That's sibling rivalry. It's fine. It's good. But the mind, we haven't even explored the whole thing, because I mean, you'd have to be alive, but have your head open. Like, they can't really do it, like, to really explore in there, you know. It's just
the
not
way they do science. Yeah, they can't dissect it while
no.
it's like active. No.
Yeah. All we have
But they
really
do
is
like
scans and
EEGs and
stuff.
things like that.
Yeah, and those things.
So
Yeah.
and I just actually came back from Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you've heard of him before.
Yeah, I have actually. I find his work very interesting.
Guy's amazing. He's so good. Well, what's amazing about him is that he really bridges a lot of things that are mystic, but in science. And he studies all his, like most of his participants, the ones that are willing to be studied. A lot of times it's like half the audience, and the audience is like 1,850 people.
Wow.
So he's got like a whole study right there in every single retreat. And they look at blood, hormone levels in the blood. They look at like bacteria in the gut. They look at the EEG and the brain waves, and they look at everything, and they see incredible healing responses. It's really fascinating. There's just so much in the mind. And the reason I think it's so hard to study is because from what I've seen in his retreat, is you could virtually create anything you want with a mind. Like, people create anything they want. If they can really focus, they can create anything. And so it really is as vast as our imagination, which is why I don't think any scientist can ever pin it down.
No, it is amazing.
It's amazing.
I'm always marveled at what our brains can do, and like what we can go through and still like function. Like, there's people who sever nerves, and like then their brains like virtually attached by like one line or something, and it's crazy, and they can still do everything, and they can relearn. And yeah, it's just amazing how the brain.
I mean, I've seen a person, it was insane. This woman, or was it a man? I saw this person who was using their feet to paint these incredibly elaborate paintings, like that people can't even do with their hands, with perfect functioning hands. It was out of this world. How do you explain that? You know, it's just incredible.
People are. And I think once you sort of realize how amazing we can be, I think it makes it easier for you to then be like, okay, you know, I can unlock that. I could do that, you know. I think it just it's one of those things, like I think we are taught like one person doesn't make a difference a lot of the time, but then we've seen throughout history one person has made a difference, like all the way through. And you just have to remember that. What's been your best experience in your field sort of so far?
It's always when I have multiple people, and I've actually had them on my podcast. You know, when somebody has something so moving in their life, they're so happy to share it. And I also love their story, and I keep repeating it. And I'm like, finally, just come on the podcast, tell your story, so that I don't have to keep repeating your story. Because sometimes I tell patients who feel a loss of hope, what amazes me, and I can't even take the full credit, because I really do see the body as it's incredible self-healing. And I do feel like, yes, I play a part, but it's the whole, it's them too. It's their bodies, it's their willingness to really uncover what's going on in their life, and like their willingness to get on this journey of healing themselves. And when I see people being told that they cannot get pregnant on their own, or they're premenopausal, or they're too old, their eggs are too old, like all of these things. And then despite that, and then one of them that I had mentioned had the miscarriage. Another one, she had an amazing story. I mean, she had everything going against her. She had type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, just so many things going on. So we worked on inflammation to the point where she went into remission for rheumatoid arthritis. She was so excited. She came in. Oh, I love her. I just love this patient. And so but despite all of that, she was such a warrior. She had such a warrior spirit. And a lot of times I'll see that people that are like, despite all this stuff, I'm still going to do it. And one of them had 2 different doctors who were like, quote unquote, the best of their field. And they're probably really amazing at, you know, certain things, but maybe not predicting people's futures, because both of them said she hardly has any eggs, and one was in Greece and the other one was in Miami. Still very reputable in their field. One said you're premenopausal. The other one said you need egg donors. I've mentioned her story before. And despite that, she ended up having 2 healthy kids and really advocating for her pregnancies, because they were like, oh, you're geriatric, that whole thing. We're going to have to induce you. She goes, no, you're not. And she just felt, she advocated for kids before she even got pregnant. Like, she advocated for herself in the face of like all these naysayers. And so that really inspires me when I see things like that, that despite the odds, but I guess who's to say what the odds are? I mean, despite all of these things that people are told, they still do it, and they still know in their heart, and they listen to their intuition. And I'll tell you another thing is that the way I practice, I don't care how much experience I have, I will never tell anybody that we're feeling, or that I know better for them than they know for themselves, regardless. Because if a person tells me in their gut they feel a certain way with a supplement, whatever, I'm like, stop it. Because in your heart, I will never bypass, I'll never go over the boundary of a person's intuition.
A lot of the time with sort of general practitioners and sort of doctors, they will just overstep that and just say, hey, I don't think it's going to happen for you, or you're not going to get better, or whatever it is. And it's like, well, not with that attitude. But I think it can be really hard, because obviously there's this person sitting in front of you. They've probably got their, degree on their wall, and you're like, well, they know more than me. And it's like, well, no, they don't know more than you. When it comes to your body, your feelings, like what you feel in your body, they don't. Because I have seen so many people, women, men, suffering, and they'll go to a doctor and the doctor does nothing, or they'll give them the wrong kind of diagnosis. They're treating this other thing when they have something completely different. And then they're like, oh, but the doctor knows more. And it's like, well, how many times do they need to get it wrong for you to understand that they're not this amazing, like, be all end all thing? There are other solutions. There are other answers out there. There are other, people who know things out
like
there.
They make mistakes. They're human. They're not God.
Exactly.
They're human, and they make mistakes. And so like, I've had so many stories like that. Like I told you, like one person who had tissue still left over, and not once but twice, and it was like a couple of times, and kept bleeding and knew something was off and kept getting dismissed. And I'm like, and she knew, like, so she's not an x-ray machine, but she knew in her body was telling her. And let me tell you, the body's so intelligent. We were designed that way because the body's meant to survive. So it's an innate thing we have this incredible innate thing that doesn't need to rely, like, it wasn't designed to rely on somebody else. It was designed to know. If you see animals, the same thing. They don't feel well, they won't eat for a couple of days, they'll fast naturally. They just listen to their bodies. They know what to do. They know if certain things smell right, don't smell right, what to eat, certain grass, if their stomach hurts. Like, they listen to that intelligence without question.
Yeah, it's a case of just tapping into and knowing that we know our own body, and someone else, just because they have a degree doesn't mean that they know our body more than we do. It's like, you don't need to be like a surgeon to know you've got a big slash on your leg and you need some stitches.
right
You can see
and
that,
it is a partnership. I mean, you could definitely get a lot from doctors, and it's really important. In some cases it could be like life-saving.
Definitely.
But at the same time, you still need to listen to that yourself, your intuition. It's important.
And for me, I'm like, if it's not dire, like if you're not in an emergency situation, because if you're in an emergency, just get whatever you can get, like doctor, whoever, but if you're in a situation where you have time, research. There could be so many options, like acupuncture. And like, I wouldn't have thought of acupuncture like a while ago for fertility, for having babies. I would have just thought, oh, acupuncture is for when you have a bad back or something. but it's just so much more than
which
that.
is good for it too.
Yeah. Well, you said, and I was like, my back is so bad right now. That sounds great. But it's so
the
true.
cupping also doesn't use needles, so that's another alternative.
Yeah, I saw a video of that. I was like, that looks interesting.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you so much for talking with me and coming on. And I would love for you to share those podcast links and things, and I'll put them down below so people can actually, listen to those as well. And any of the other stuff you mentioned, like any links, just send them to me and I'll put them on, because I think people will be very interested to hear more about all these different things that we've spoken about, like with the acupuncture and the different sort of avenues you can go. If you're too scared of needles like me. And of course your services as well. So if anyone wants to contact Michelle, I'm sure she'd be more than willing to hear from you. And we'll make sure all those links are down below as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Ella. It was really a great conversation. And I really enjoyed talking to you, just hearing your story and your dream. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, the dream stuff always gets me as well. And it kind of gives you goosebumps and makes you tingle. It's just,
it really does.
Great. But yeah, thank you. And I think I've got to run to another one. So I'll speak to you on hopefully the lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bye, Ella.
Okay. Bye. Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.